Hey guys, my name is Jonah Hayes, and I am presenting on the situational approach to leadership. So let's just dive right in. First up, what is situational leadership? So situational leadership is a type of leadership that is fully dependent on the way that you interact with people. And so kind of just reading off of the list, an approach to leadership that aims to adjust the way in which people are led based off of what they or the situation at hand needs. So it's very malleable, very changeable with the person that they're interacting with. So a leader will approach a situation, read the people, and we'll get into this in a second, but read the people that they're with and adapt their leadership strategy to that person. And so there are four primary ways in which this style is executed, and they depend on how much direction is needed and how much support are needed. And so the four that it's kind of been summarized in is directing, where there is high direction and low support. So it's very hands-on. You are all about efficiency. So this is a group of people who are very capable and know what they're doing, but still need direction. That's what this is going to be for. There's coaching, which is high direction, high support. The difference between directing and coaching is just that there is more support involved. The leader is much more hands-on with the group that they're with. Instead of being more of like an overseer, more of like what would be like an administrator, it's more of hands-on, but still efficiency driven. And then you have supporting, which is low direction, high support, where you are then uplifting the people who are doing a task. High support, so you're very relational, very emotional, and low direction. And so you are less hands-on. And finally, there's delegating, which is low direction, low support, which, like the name implies, it's delegation, which means that you really you're not supporting, you're not directing, you're giving it over to a different person. You are giving over the more of a direct leadership position over to another person. So you're not supporting them, you're not directing them, you're giving it over to someone else, and then kind of being off in the distance, overseeing, but not having a direct hand in play. And yes, the root of situational leadership is behavioral psychology. So analyzing the people you're with, because people who ascribe to a behavioral form of psychology believe that it is people first, right? So that the people who you are over are going to be much more willing to serve, much more invested, based on external factors rather than internal. So someone who is, for example, instead of being internally motivated, like having initiative, that kind of thing. This posits that people are more likely to perform in a rewards-based situation. So if the person who is if they're being overseen, they want that person to see them, understand them, relate to them. Cool. A leader ascribing to this form of leadership believes that the people they're leading over will perform better when their specific needs and emotions are catered to. Moving on. So the pros and cons. So like I said earlier, this form of leadership is adaptable and moldable, which means that depending on the person they're with, it's very easy to mold and shape this form of leadership to the person at hand. Next, it increases efficiency. This is going to be a big part of this style of leadership, that the people who you are caring for are going to feel cared for. Therefore, they're going to want to invest more in the company or the business or the organization that they're working for. If the person who is overseeing them is caring about their needs, remembering specific details about them, they're going to be more likely to want to care about the stuff that they're doing, about the work that they are doing. So it generates morale, same deal. People are going to want to invest in and emotionally invest in, as well as far as the work side of things, emotionally and physically invest in the company. It's very strong in small scale, small team environments. So think like tiny little goal-based. So there are things, a thing that needs to be done, a task force is made. This style of leadership works great in that environment. And finally, it increases communication. And the part of that is the smaller team. But going back to the wanting to be invested in the group based on being led this way, people are more likely to want to talk to other people when they're being cared for. On the con side, in an environment where efficiency is king, when efficiency is king, it can be seen as inconsistent. And so people who don't like to be led this way will feel that the catering that you're doing is more pampering and more like being you treating other people a different way than them. It could be seen as inconsistent. And then just as it is strong in small scale team, it can become weak outside of that small team environment. Same with inconsistency, it can risk favoritism and at the very bottom there, it says potential for misinterpretation. So those are kind of all in the same vein. And it can also be time consuming. A leader, in order to execute this properly, has to get to know people individually, has to devote specific brain power to remembering and being intentional. And sometimes those things come naturally, but it still requires effort. Effort is hard to remember every little detail, and you don't have to remember every little detail, but to even remember small details about a group of people you're working with is hard, and to adjust your leadership position, that's time consuming, and it can take effort. So moving on, leadership identification. So the compass one follows as a leader ascribing to situational approach is one directed by the principle of putting people first. We discussed that earlier. And while seeing employees as simply efficiency machines is a bygone method of most standards, different leadership styles vary the amount by which that employee is cared for on an individual level, which that's a lot of words and I don't mean to read, but basically what this is saying is the view of seeing people as simply cogs in a machine, that's kind of it's very Industrial Revolution-esque. That's not really what we see anymore, but the amount people are cared for varies, and this is what they're saying. This is saying that this leadership, the way that it is identified is by putting people first. It's not like, it is the complete opposite of seeing them as a cog in a machine. It is seeing them as a person before seeing them as an employee. So the examples of a person who would identify with this form of leadership is a person with a strong connection, with strong connection skills and people skills who desires to care. A person to desire to make people feel like they belong, or someone who has, or in the opposite way, someone who has experienced feeling like a number. They have been kind of this like idea of a cog in a machine, or like a number, or like one of the so many people who all they're seen as is the work that they do rather than the person that they are. So someone who has experienced that may want to change the tide. Next, we have implementation. So the way that this leadership style is implemented is rather abstract, as we kind of talked about this earlier. The very nature of this approach is very natural, very malleable. It is hard to pinpoint one way to do this leadership style. So as step by step as it can be, think about, so at the very start, it's talking to someone. It is, a new person comes in, you take the time to introduce yourself, say, hey, my name is whatever, I will be your boss for this time, I will be in whatever way you're leading over that person, and then taking the time to ask them genuine questions and remember it. It is really hard to see this type of thing, and sorry, I was looking at my battery percentage. It is low. Anyway, yeah, so remembering things. And what I was saying was it's hard to do that sometimes because it is a fundamental characteristic of your personality. You are good at people or you're not good at people. If you're good at people, you're going to be good at this strategy. And so talking with a person, thinking through practical ways to lead them in accordance with the stuff that you're learning, and then acting in that way. So that's kind of the implementation. And then some of the stuff that you will see develop from that is unity in the workspace, trust between the different hierarchical levels in the business itself, as well as efficiency, investment in the company, which we discussed, enhanced employee performance, and reduced micromanagement. You won't have to worry about what they're doing because they trust you. And the movie that I decided to analyze is The Greatest Showman. The leader in particular is Phineas Barnum, who is that dude, obviously. He has different areas that he leads in. The three that I picked are his family, the circus acts that he works with, and then Jenny Lind, who's on the next slide. So his family, he is a dad, he is a husband, and so he is loving, genuine, eager to provide, but at the cost of his family, he is eager to provide for them, right? So the life that he had, or the life that he wants to give them, is not the one that he could give them immediately. And so he sought to give them better, but that ended up being, if you've seen the movie, obviously we know that ended up being detrimental to the way that he provided for them as a father and a husband. He tried to provide for them economically before he tried to provide for them in a loving capacity, right? Or in like a genuine emotional way. On the contrary, his circus acts, he was their boss, and so it was a little bit different. It was much more casual, and he, despite the casual nature, it did not go without an air of expectancy, is what I have on here. So he had expectation for them, right? He had expectation, and he was fervent about the way they did their job. And this, we later see this expand into seeing them purely as tools, right? So like they are simply the way that he makes money. And we see that whenever he loses his priorities, whenever he starts joining in with Jenny Lind, who we are going to get into now. So she is the Swedish singer that he picks up in Britain, and she is from kind of a higher socioeconomic status, so Barnum adjusts accordingly. He is much more proper with the way that he handles himself, much more high class, if you will, much more dignity and respect. So he has adjusted his leadership style to being her boss as well, her agent, kind of, right? The person who gets her acts. But since she is from a much different perspective than like his circus acts, he treats her differently. Next, we have the situational approaches within ministry, and I'll rip through these pretty quickly. There are different needs for adults, students, children, volunteers, and staff. So each person is different, each person has their own needs. Pastoralship in itself requires a malleable leadership perspective. So you have counseling one day, you have leading a funeral another day, you have doing a wedding, you have preaching. All of those require different things. You work with different people, you work with staff, like I said, you work with students, adults. And then I went into a couple things with student ministry because that's where I'm involved. Student ministry has you interacting with parents, Sunday school leaders, as well as students. I learned recently that parents, Sunday school leaders, and students should be as each a third of that pie chart. So you have to learn how to adjust to talk to and to relate to those three different groups. Fostering new leaders in the youth ministry. There are leaders all over the place. There are potential leaders all over the student ministry, and getting them to shine in their own way all takes different things, right? And so it's finding those things by leading them in different ways. And finally, church administration is all about small scale projects for individual Sundays. Problem solving is king and efficiency is required. And so on any given Sunday, multiple things could be happening. And so task groups have to be formed. And so leading over those task groups is hard, not impossible, but with this leadership approach, you're able to come in from different perspectives and lead over them. They require different things, and so you yourself can adjust to what they need because you are much more flexible because you've been leading this way, right? So that's all I got. I like this approach a lot. This is kind of the way that I tend to approach things to the best of my ability. I don't like seeing people as numbers. I really enjoy, because what this does is it brings the personality out of a person. You're able to see them more as a person rather than just a tool for what you're trying to accomplish. And the investment that it can bring from a person, from a student, from a friend even, is awesome, and it's incredible. So anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed watching. Yeah, have a great rest of your day or evening or whenever you're watching this. See you guys.